Sometimes it's the most ordinary things that lead to the most unthinkable outcomes. A routine journey home, a trusted way to get around, a simple decision that ends in absolute darkness. Today, we're going to talk about the murder of Rachel Siama Adyambo and the truly chilling pattern of violence that turned the Bondo-Usenge Road into a predator's hunting ground. And we're going to start right here with this line from the source material that just perfectly captures the cold irony of this whole case. Because this story, it doesn't begin at a crime scene. It starts in a hospital mortuary, a place for endings that just forces you to ask one question. How on earth did she get here?
So right there, in that quiet building, Rachel's trip home came to its official, heartbreaking end. But for her family and for the investigators, this was really just the beginning of a desperate search for answers.
To really understand the weight of this loss, you first have to understand the life that was stolen. So let's talk about who Rachel Siama actually was. Rachel's life was really built on these three powerful pillars. First, she was a scholar, a sharp legal mind. Then, she was a dedicated public servant, working hard behind the scenes in her local government. And, above everything else, she was a mom, a devoted mother to her two little boys. Her colleagues, they described her as just brilliant, precise, reliable, the kind of person you build institutions around. But at home, she was the absolute center of her family's world. And her loss, well, it wasn't just an absence. It was like the sound of laughter and life in her home was just turned off. And this quote from her boss, the assembly speaker, it really underscores the kind of respect she had earned. She wasn't just some employee. She was a truly vital part of the engine that made everything work. Okay, so now let's shift gears and walk through the events of that final night. How does a trip you've made 100 times before turn into an absolute nightmare? So the evening starts with a celebration, a graduation ceremony. From there, she starts her journey back, getting into Bondo town pretty late, around 10 p.m. She calls home, lets them know she's close, and then she does something so many people do every single day. She hires a local motorcycle taxi, a boda, for that last little stretch of the journey home. And this right here is such a crucial, heartbreaking detail. Her family actually offered to come get her. But Rachel, she was independent. This was a road she knew, a trip she'd made before. In her mind, she was perfectly safe. And that confidence, that trust in the everyday routine, was exactly what her attackers were waiting to exploit. As they're driving down this dark, quiet road, the trap is sprung. The motorcycle engine just sputters and dies. The driver gets off, taps the fuel tank, and delivers the excuse, "Looks like we're out of fuel." And just like that, she's isolated, stranded miles from home, completely in the dark. She manages to make one last phone call. And what's so chilling is that her voice was steady. She wasn't panicked, she wasn't screaming. She was just calmly stating the facts, telling her family where she was. She had absolutely no idea she was caught in a predator's trap. Because what happened next was not random at all. As the police started digging, they uncovered a chilling reality. They were looking at a carefully rehearsed, repeatable method, what investigators call a criminal signature. Think of a criminal signature as a killer's calling card. It's that unique set of behaviors they have to do. And in this case, the signature was this terrifyingly complete package. Use a trick to isolate the victim, rob them, assault them to feel powerful, and then kill them to make sure there are no witnesses. Their method was a brutal four-step operation. First, find the right target, someone alone, usually a woman, at night. Step 2, isolate them with the believable excuse, like running out of gas. Step 3, attack for money and for dominance. And the final, terrible step, eliminate the only person who could ever identify you. This quote from the source material just nails it. The fuel problem wasn't a real problem. It was their key. It was a practice lie, their calling card that unlocked a moment of vulnerability they could exploit again and again. And this is where the story gets even bigger and even more horrifying. Because as this table shows, Rachel was not the first. Look at this. Along the very same stretch of road, other women had been targeted with the exact same method, all leading to the same tragic end. It was an undeniable, terrifying pattern. So the conclusion was just unavoidable. The police weren't looking for a lone killer. They were hunting for at least 2 serial predators who had turned this road into their own private hunting ground. Which brings us to right now. The investigation is still very much active, and Rachel's story has become this brutal but absolutely necessary warning for everyone. 2. That's the number of prime suspects police believe are responsible for this entire series of crimes. And right now, as we speak, they are still out there at large.
And that's exactly why public awareness is so critical. The investigators are sure that someone, somewhere, knows something. Maybe they heard a strange comment or saw a person who suddenly had extra money. Any little detail could be the thing that stops them from striking again. Look, this tragedy teaches us some really hard but vital lessons about survival. This isn't about living in fear. It's about being smart. Try to plan your trips so they end in daylight. Think twice about taking a ride from a stranger after dark. If your bus gets in late, maybe just wait in town until morning. Share your location with someone you trust. And most importantly, always, always trust your gut. If a situation feels wrong, it is wrong. And that's really the key takeaway here. Being cautious, planning ahead, staying aware, that isn't being scared. When you're facing threats like this, it is a conscious, powerful act of survival. In the end, we have to come back to the human cost. All of Rachel's potential, her dreams, her love for her kids, everything she was building, it was all erased. And for what? For a phone, a little bit of cash, and a monstrous fleeting moment of power. So we'll leave you with this question. Rachel's story can't just end in silence. It has to become a demand for change, for vigilance, and for a justice that can finally drag the predators who hunt on our roads out of the darkness and into the light.